My name is Amelia. You know, some stories don't begin with drama. They creep up on you like a slow fog, quietly suffocating you before you even realize you're being choked. I never imagined my story would be one of betrayal, sabotage, and cold corporate politics. But here I am, telling you how my co-workers tried to ruin me. Tried and failed, miserably. When I first joined the company, I was nothing special, just another mid-level analyst in a sea of ambitious faces, all trying to climb their way up the invisible corporate ladder. I didn't come from an Ivy League school or have high-level connections. I was just a guy with a strong work ethic and a knack for solving problems others didn't even know existed. My department wasn't flashy. We weren't in sales bringing in big numbers or in marketing making noise. We were in operations, supply chain logistics to be exact. The kind of work people love to ignore until something goes wrong. That's when everyone turns and points fingers. And somehow, they always point toward the quiet guy in the back who keeps his head down. At first, I stayed in my lane. I came in early, left late, and made sure I delivered everything ahead of schedule. I fixed things that were broken, documented systems that had never been documented, and made workflows more efficient. I didn't complain, didn't gossip, didn't ask for praise, and maybe that was my first mistake. You see, people like to know where you stand. They want to label you ally, threat, pawn. But I gave them nothing. And in a world where office politics mattered more than performance, being neutral was a sin, especially when your results start making other people look bad. At first it was subtle, little jabs in meetings. Oh, I think John handled that, but I'm not sure if it was done correctly. Or, we might want to double check the numbers. He's new, after all. I let it slide. I told myself they were just being cautious. But then came the exclusion. Important meetings I wasn't invited to. Project groups that were accidentally formed without me. My reports went unread. My emails went unanswered. I still remember the day I realized it wasn't just oversight. It was targeted. I walked into the break room and found two of my teammates, Melissa and Greg, huddled together whispering. The moment they saw me, they stopped talking. But I caught a glance of a spreadsheet open on Greg's laptop. My name, highlighted, next to a list of tasks and dates. They were tracking me. That night, I stayed late, not to catch up on work, but to dig. I didn't want to believe it, but I had to know. I combed through the shared drives, email chains, internal messages, and slowly a picture formed. There was a group, Melissa, Greg, and a couple others from different teams, actively working to discredit me. They were feeding false info to managers, tweaking numbers to make my work look sloppy, even editing shared documents after I'd submitted them to make it seem like I'd made errors. They wanted me gone. And for what? Because I didn't play politics. Because I made things better without needing validation. Or maybe it was because I'd quietly taken over a process Melissa used to mismanage, and suddenly her importance shrank. I sat there, staring at the evidence, hands trembling. I could confront them, sure. But then what? They'd deny it, spin it, maybe even double down. HR, please. Melissa had friends there too. That's how it worked in this place. So I made a decision. I wouldn't fight them. Not directly. I would outwork them, outsmart them, outlast them. But I wouldn't just survive. I'd leave a trail so undeniable, so bulletproof, that when the right eyes finally saw it, their entire little empire would crumble. I started building something in the background, a shadow project of sorts. Our supply chain was riddled with inefficiencies, manual processes, redundant steps, vendors who were bleeding us dry with overpriced services. No one had time to fix it. Or rather, no one cared to. So I did, quietly, after hours. I built a new framework. I analyzed our vendor data, used code to automate reporting, created dashboards that displayed real-time performance, I even started running silent A/B tests with some of our smaller suppliers, negotiating better rates, changing routes, improving delivery times. Every improvement I logged in a private folder. Every meeting I wasn't invited to, I listened from the hallway, took notes, and incorporated it into my work. But I never told anyone, not yet. Meanwhile, the sabotage escalated. One morning, I walked in and found my access credentials revoked. IT said I had requested a system reset. I hadn't. Melissa claimed I missed a deadline, one I'd never been assigned. Greg told the department head I was working on unauthorized changes to our vendor database. They weren't just undermining me anymore. They were setting traps, and I let them because I knew something they didn't. The CEO had recently launched an initiative, a company-wide innovation drive. He wanted ideas, disruptive bottom-up solutions, and more importantly, he wanted them from people outside the executive bubble. So I waited. I watched as Melissa and her group continued their little power games. They were emboldened now. Greg even joked in a meeting that some people wouldn't be around much longer. They were so sure they'd won. Then the call came. The CEO's assistant sent out a request for employees to present innovative solutions to operational problems. There were only 5 slots. I submitted my framework anonymously through a backdoor portal, attaching the data, the models, the results, everything. I didn't mention names, didn't ask for credit, just facts, clean, precise, undeniable. 2 days later, I got an email. Please report to the 42nd floor boardroom. Bring your work. I walked in to find the CEO, his chief of staff, the head of operations, and the director of finance all seated and waiting. No smiles, just expectation. Show us, the CEO said. So I did. I walked them through the entire thing, how we were overpaying by 27% annually on freight, how simple automation could reduce reporting hours by 60%, how vendor performance could be tracked live instead of monthly, and how one quiet employee with no resources had saved the company nearly $2.3 million in projected costs. The room was silent. Then the CEO leaned back and said, "Who authorized you to do this?" My heart froze. Was this the moment it all blew up? "I wasn't authorized, sir," I said. "I just saw the problem and decided to fix it." He stared at me for what felt like a full minute. Then he smiled. Good. The next day, everything changed. My access was restored. My desk was moved upstairs. I was given a new title, Director of Strategic Operations. And suddenly, everyone knew my name. Melissa, Greg, the rest of their little alliance. Let's just say, they didn't fare so well. The CEO had done his own digging. When he found out what they'd been up to, how they'd systematically tried to eliminate someone who was quietly doing more for the company than their entire department combined, he didn't just fire them, he made an example of them. HR was restructured, security policies changed, and a new whistleblower protocol was launched, named after my project. But here's the real twist. That shadow project, it wasn't just about saving the company money. It was a test of character, of patience, of what happens when you refuse to play the game dirty, and instead, let your work speak louder than their noise. And when the right people finally hear it, that's when the real game begins. So now, when people ask me how I got here, how I went from being the invisible guy in the back to having a seat at the table, I just smile, because they don't know the half of it. They don't know about the nights I stayed up wondering if I should quit. They don't know how many times I bit my tongue while lies were being spoken in front of me. They don't know how it felt to be pushed out of meetings, only to have the data I built be presented as someone else's. But the CEO knows, and more importantly, I know. I know I didn't stoop to their level. I know I didn't take shortcuts. I know I stood my ground, not with noise, but with results. And in the end, that's what saved me. Because when the dust settles and the politics fade, and the backstabbers turn on each other. Only the work remains, and mine spoke louder than any whisper ever could.